Eminem's career was blowing up, and the rap star lifestyle was about to consume Kim's husband.
I was hoping that when he went on tour, and because I seen how fast his career was taking off, I was hoping that that would keep him faithful and grounded to me. That was my main goal. His first tours, when our relationship really started to deteriorate, he was cheating on me a lot and drinking and using drugs, and he wasn't home, and it just wasn't good.
Kim was left in Detroit with a baby, waiting for the man she loved to come home.
Right when Marshall's first tour started is when his ego just went, you know, he was untouchable. Like, he was God. That's what he thought, you know. Every time I talked to him, I wasn't allowed to question him about what was going on. If I did, I was just told that I should be grateful that he still talks to me, you know, how many women throw themselves at him. And I was just pretty much felt like a piece of crap.
All right, well, you've interviewed a lot of people at Star Magazine, these celebrity couples. Is what she's describing, Kim Mathers, common, this sense of loneliness and isolation as the fame of your spouse builds?
Certainly. There's the temptation factor, which she mentioned, that women are throwing themselves at him, so that's part of it. The time apart. He's on tour. She's back home in Detroit raising their daughter. And, of course, with them, there's the problem that he's put her in the public eye. She doesn't want to be there. And they're actually living in totally different worlds.
Right, and she's never built a career for herself. Obviously, that wasn't her desire. Because she could, right? Like, you guys would write about her if she wanted to be interviewed.
She could be famous so quickly if she wanted it, because her name is already famous. She's a beautiful, well-spoken woman, and she's fascinating to all of us. She really could be in this industry, but she's chosen not to, and people don't really respect that. They just keep prying into her life.
Yes, right. We're going to keep prying. While Eminem has been living it up in Los Angeles, Kim says she's been back home with their daughter, barely making ends meet. More with Kim Mathers when we return.
Coming up, Kim Mathers reveals the untold story about her failed marriage to rap superstar Eminem.
When Marshall went on tour, I felt lonely, depressed, disgusted with his behavior. Some days I just cried all day. It was hard.
And later, Kim Mathers talks openly about the night she tried to take her own life.
He had a blow-up doll up on stage that looked like me, and he was physically beating it and kicking it around. And that night, I went home and I tried to commit suicide.
Long last.
We're back with our interview with Eminem's ex-wife, Kim Mathers, who recently sat down with us in Detroit in one of her first ever on-camera interviews. And with us today is Jill Dobson from Star Magazine. It's not your first on-camera interview. You've been here many times. All right. Well, when did this guy become so famous?
It was around 1999. His Slim Shady LP came out. Millions and millions sold, and he ended up winning about 9 Grammys for it, all sorts of musical success.
So that's it. And then your privacy becomes really hard to maintain if you're in any way associated with this man.
Right, and not just that, but as Kim mentioned in one of her interviews, you can be the wife of a famous person and stay out of the spotlight, but he mentioned Kim in song after song after song on this album. So everyone who's a fan of Eminem knows all about Kim, or
thinks they do. Okay, when we talked with Kim, she told us how difficult it was to be at home raising their daughter while her husband Eminem went out on tour without her.
After me and Marshall got married and I came back to Michigan, I was staying with my mom. He went back out to California to prepare for his first tour and whatever. He was doing the details for all of that. And I still worked for maybe 2.5 years after Marshall got signed, because I didn't see really any of the money. I mean, maybe a check every other week for $800, $900, or if I called and said, you know, Haley needs this, or I need this, you know, that's the only time I would see anything.
Money was tight, and the time alone was hard on Kim.
When Marshall went on tour, I felt lonely, depressed, disgusted with his behavior. Some days I was angry and wanted to hurt him, you know, and some days I just cried all day. It was hard. You know, we had never been apart, and, you know, he made so many promises before he left. You know, he wasn't going to develop any bad habits, and he wasn't going to be with any women, no matter how much they threw themselves at him, and it just was the complete opposite. You know, that was my husband, the man that I loved, and he was making me feel like, you know, just another one of his groupies that he, you know, did what he wanted to while he was in that state and just, you know, moved on to the next. I was nothing to him at that time.
Then Kim talked to us about how her public humiliation led to one of the darkest moments of her life.
One night I was at a concert of Marshall's, and he was singing a song that was about me, and he had a blow-up doll up on stage that looked like me, and he was physically beating it and kicking it around, and threw it out to the crowd. And just seeing the crowd response and everybody cheering, singing the words and laughing, and it just felt like, you know, everyone was staring at me and knew that it was about me. And that night I went home and I tried to commit suicide.
All right, well, I don't need to tell you that for anyone to try to commit suicide has to be a very, very dark moment. She had no hope, apparently, and yet people didn't really, I don't know, empathize with her, come to her side.
Right.
From your perspective in the celebrity world, why not? Why wouldn't they say, he's a bad guy, we need to help her?
I think that Kim really has become a character in the public eye. No one really thinks of her as a real person. They think of her as this person in these songs who is a bad person. And so she's been dehumanized, so to speak, to use one of your words.
Yeah, one of my words.
And people didn't really realize that this is a real individual in real pain.
And sort of, in very concrete terms, he dehumanized her by creating this doll.
And she was at that concert just humiliated.
Okay, well, even though Kim and Eminem divorced, Kim told us they still stayed in touch and thus began their on-again, off-again relationship.
All I wanted was a normal family. I just wanted to go to work, a 9 to 5, you know, and have a husband, and us come home, you know, get our kids from daycare, and sit down and eat together, and watch movies together, and be able to go shopping together or to the park. That's all I wanted.
Kim and Eminem's marriage couldn't withstand the temptations of fame.
Our marriage failed because I was unfaithful and he was unfaithful. It just, at that point in time, that we really didn't have anything in common. He had went one way and I went on a different way. After our first divorce, I moved not far from where he was living, and I don't know, we did our own things basically, you know, but we were still seeing each other off and on, you know. Sometimes we were serious, sometimes it was just, you know, comfortable, casual sex. And then I developed a severe problem with drugs and alcohol. Got arrested for possession, drunk driving, and then, I don't know, just I was incarcerated. I did rehab.
Kim had developed a drug habit, and she claims her ex-husband was having the same problem.
I slowly started to realize, like, he had a lot of the same behavior that I had when I was going through an addiction problem. And I was constantly questioning him about it, and it just started fights. Like, I would get kicked out, he would kick me out, and I'd have to go stay with my mom. And then he finally came clean and admitted, you know, that he did have a problem, but and that he was going to get help for it.
All right, Jill, put this in perspective for us in terms of Eminem's career. So we get it, the marriage is crumbling. Things are not good at home. But what's happening on the road for him at this point?
Well, it's the opposite. As bad as things were in their relationship, and here they are getting their first divorce in 2001, he's winning Grammys, he's breaking records for all the albums he's selling, and he's gearing up for the film 8 Mile, which was based partially on his life. He starred in it, and he even won an Oscar for the song Lose Yourself that he wrote for the movie.
All right, so giant success, and then this on-again, off-again relationship goes on again. Just when people thought Kim and Eminem's love story had ended after the first divorce, Eminem shocked listeners on a Detroit radio show because he announced that he and Kim weren't just back together, but they were going to get married again for a second time. Listen to this.